Now we're going to take a look at papal thoughts on religious liberty. We already reviewed this in previous episodes, so we're going to skim through it really quickly just to refresh everybody's memory. So we have Pope Gregory XVI in 1832 saying this shameful font of indifferentism gives rise to that absurd and erroneous proposition which claims that liberty of conscience must be maintained for everyone. So in other words, he's saying it's ridiculous. What do you mean you want religious liberty for everyone? And then we have from which totally false idea of social government they do not fear to foster that erroneous opinion, most fatal in its effects on the Catholic Church. So it has a fatal effect on the Catholic Church's hold and the salvation of souls, that liberty of conscience and worship is each man's personal right. And of course, the next one, this is the Syllabus of Errors, where they list all the things that are false that in their opinion. And this is one of them. It is error to believe that every man is free to embrace and profess that religion which, guided by the light of reason, he shall consider true.
They weren't satisfied with just sending people over. They wanted to overthrow the structure that the United States had. Remember, the Jesuits and the Catholic Church want a fascist form of government.
Right.
They want the union of church and state because that's what they had during the Dark Ages. So here we look at some of the plans they had, and this is the Congress of Vienna. Now, not many people know about this, but basically what this was a council that the monarchs of Europe had during these years, 1814 and 1815. And they met together. And they had this Congress, and these went on for various years. This was just the start of it. And what we're going to learn is that the Pope and the Jesuits were behind these meetings, and they had a specific goal for that. If we read on, simultaneously with the calling of the Congress of Vienna in 1814, Pope Pius VII restored the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, which had been abolished by Pope Clement IV, July 21st, 1773, on the grounds that it was immoral, dangerous, and was a menace to the very life of the papacy. Clement was promptly poisoned for his act. With the restoration of this order, the execution of the secret Treaty of Verona was placed in their keeping. The Congress of Vienna was a black conspiracy against popular governments, at which the high contracting parties announced at its close that they had formed a quote-unquote holy alliance. Now, that's a phrase that's come up again. We're going to talk about that again.
Yes.
During the Reagan administration. This was a cloak under which they masked to deceive the people. The particular business of the Congress of Verona it developed was the ratification of Article 6 of the Congress of Vienna, which was, in short, the promise to prevent or destroy popular governments wherever found and to reestablish monarchy where it had been set aside.
And that is very terrifying because of what's being said in America right now, that basically they want another monarch. They want a king.
Well, that's how what they're calling Trump sometimes.
Yeah.
But interesting that basically they didn't want this whole religious liberty movement going on in America to come to their countries. They didn't want popular government, in other words, government by the people, to come and take hold in their countries. They wanted to stick with monarchy. And there was another pope that I believe it was probably Pope Leo XIII, who actually was really sad when the monarchies started dismantling in Europe, because he was like, this is the way we like to operate. This is how we want Europe to be. It has to be controllable. And when you can control the monarchy, you can control the people. But clearly in Europe, they were unsuccessful because there are no monarchs anymore in Europe that control the country. They're all figureheads, just there for history's sake, but not really because they are involved in the government.
So these meetings went on for various years after the Council of Vienna. It didn't stop there. And now we have the Congress of Verona. Now, this was a secret Congress that was held. I believe it was 7 years later. The Congress of Verona met at Verona from the 20th of October to the 14th, December 1822, as part of the series of international conferences or congresses that opened with the Congress of Vienna in 1814, 1815. So they met at this council, and here's some more about this. Let's read. The sovereigns of the Holy Alliance had massed large armies and soon entered into a pledge to devote them to the suppression of all uprisings of the people in favor of free government. And he desired to devote the Jesuits, supported by his pontifical power, to the accomplishment of that end. So here we get a glimpse of the power that was behind these councils and the power that was influencing their decisions. And if we read on, now this is interesting because on April 25th, 1916, U.S. Senator Robert L. Owen officially recorded the secret Treaty of Verona in the Congressional Record. Mm-hmm. The monarchs of Europe, collectively known as the quote-unquote Holy Alliance, and influenced by Rome, signed the following treaty in Verona. So this is what they signed. This is what they agreed to. Now, this is before we get to where they signed, but listen to what this says. This is Mr. Owen speaking. I wish to put in the record the secret Treaty of Verona of November 22nd, 1822, showing what this ancient conflict is between the rule of the few and the rule of the many. I wish to call the attention of the Senate to this treaty because it is the threat of this treaty that was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. Mm-hmm. Now, some people may have heard of the Monroe Doctrine, but they don't actually know how we got the Monroe Doctrine.
Right.
And this is how we got that. It throws a powerful white light upon the conflict between monarchical government and the government by the people. The Holy Alliance, under the influence of Metternich, the Premier of Austria, in 1822, issued this remarkable secret document.
All right, notice what it says here. The undersigned, specially authorized to make some additions to the Treaty of the Holy Alliance, after having exchanged their respective credentials, have agreed as follows. Article 1. The high contracting powers, being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxim of the sovereignty of the people with the divine right, engage mutually in the most solemn manner to use all their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent its being introduced in those countries where it is not yet known. Article 2 talks about the liberty of the press, which is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations to the detriment of those of princes. The high contracting parties promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it. So they want to suppress the freedom of press as well. Article 3, convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes. The high contracting parties, those are of course the people who taking part in this treaty, declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt.
What form of government is that?
So who are the clergy?
The priest, the church.
Right, that's right.
So the state has to go by the dictates of the church.
That's right. And then jumping down, the contracting parties join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations.
I think that's pretty clear who was behind this.
It is. It is.